James Conner, my grandfather, died about 4 years before I was born. And he was a pound fisherman. There were fish camps set up on the beach. And there were these long boats, like there's one in the Life-Saving Museum. And there'd be a half a dozen men that would go push them out through the breakers. And once they were out to the breakers, the water was calmer, and they had driven posts in the ocean into the floor and strung nets all around into a circle, and with an opening so that fish would swim in to that opening, but they couldn't get out. And those were the pounds. And the ox carts would take these loads of fish over to the train station, which was still there before 1933 storm, and load them up on trains to be taken to Philadelphia and Baltimore and Wilmington, Washington, the big cities. And that's how they got their fresh seafood from Ocean City. Milton and my dad were cousins. Dad was born in 1917 here. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing Milton was probably about the same age Dad was. The town was run by the ladies. They liked building and buying up these old buildings and turning them into real rooming houses, or building a hotel, And they were all run by women. And Miss Ludlam, Miss Willie Ludlam, was one of them. And she was, full steam ahead. She built the Santa Maria Hotel. And I'm not so sure. I'm thinking maybe she built the Miramar, where you were talking about.
I
Hastings
think so,
and the Hastings
yes.
Miramar.
Hastings Miramar?
Yeah. And that put it in the Conner family, see?
Yeah.
And then when she built the Santa Maria, she went up there, and Milton and Thelma Conner ran the Hastings and the Hastings Miramar. Yeah. She originally started out in a rooming house on 2nd Street and Baltimore Avenue. That building is not there anymore. I think there's a motel there now. But anyway, it was like the second house from the corner on 3rd Street. And that was the original Conner's Inn. And then this is when my father and his brother and his sister were still like teenagers. And they would, and my grandmother, she'd rent their rooms right out. She'd make them go out in the shed and stay in the shed while the rooms were occupied. My father said we'd be out in the shed, laying down in the shed. It was so hot in there. The property was cheap. It was it was $1,000 for ours, because our lot was on the ocean side of Beach Highway. If you wanted to go on the bay side of Beach Highway, you could get 2 lots for $1,000.
You believe that?
Yeah. And so he was offered either his choice, He said, no, I want to be on the ocean side. That way the kids won't have to cross the street when they go to the beach, when they get big enough. So that's where he built the house. We never wore shoes, and we were picking sandburrs out of our feet like every other day. I'm spending a lot of time on the beach. I'm selling the Baltimore Sun on the beach, and selling conch shells with pictures I painted on them. And I did more of mine in the 50s when we lived up on 78th Street. But now, and Barbara did the same. She worked with me at the conch shell stand that we had up there. My father came out one day and he said, "How's it going?" I said, "Not many people are stopping." And he said, let's paint some colors on them. Let's paint some of them yellow, some of them blue, and some of them red. And just try it and put them in there with the rest of them and see if that gets people to stop. Well, it did. I would sit there in idle time and paint a picture on one, a beach scene or something like that. Well, Dad had put cement in them. He had poured cement in these shells. So we were selling them as doorstop. It's not like I was some great artist or anything, but they had mercy on a kid, My mom died. We moved in to take over Conner's Inn to keep the place going. Of course, Dad worked outside of the rooming house. Mom, she took the rooming house over, so that You know, that was her whole thing, was the rooming house. And then when something needed to be fixed, Dad would come home and do it. And if I could do it, then he'd just turn it over to me, which is what he'd rather do. But I was just a teenager. So I think we had 27 rooms all told. So on checkout day, you were moving, trying to strip the beds down, get the laundry down to the washing machines, and going up and cleaning the rooms and then remaking the beds before check-in time. Yeah, on the holidays, you couldn't get a room in Ocean City. So Harrisons were good about sending us their overflow and from Harrison Hall. And so we'd get people come up, you know, it'd be midnight. For one more family, my mother would string a clothesline across the middle of the lobby and come hang sheets over it and rent out half of the lobby to them. And then there was also the couch down there. So, and they were just tickled to death at, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning to have a place to lie down.
Mom and Dad bought it from the other two heirs, family. And then they ran it together. We all had to move out of our bedrooms, put our things in the attic, and our parents would rent out our rooms. And we'd all sleep in the same room, Then we'd go back in the attic in the fall and get our things down and make our rooms exactly the way they were when we, I had a Hawaiian themed bedroom and put the net back up and pretend that it was never taken down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I found out later that a lot of families did that. They'd give us $1 or $2, and we'd spend all day on the boardwalk playing pinball machines on 9th Street. Barefoot the whole summer, We put our shoes back on to go to school.
We just lived out on the farm. And I went to school in Buckingham in Berlin until through the 8th grade. And that's went to 9th grade at Stephen Decatur. That was the first year that Stephen Decatur opened up. And it opened up for 9, 10, 11, and 12. And that's when the Ocean City people that was going to Ocean City School at the existing City Hall, that's when they came to Stephen Decatur. That's when we hooked all up together.
I was a Seahawk. I played basketball, but I didn't want to. I wanted to be a cheerleader. But my brother was on the first string, and they thought I would be like him. So the first game I was in was down in Worcester High School. It was an away game. And she put me in, and I made a basket right away. But it was the other team's basket. So those girls were thanking me, coming up, because I scored them 2 points. And I can hear Mrs. Powell, Connor, get off that court. I said, I told you I wanted to be a cheerleader. When Bobby was a little boy, when he was, I guess it was before I was born, they told me, the operator would come on automatically, like Mayberry. And she knew everybody's voices. And Bobby picked it up and she said, what is it? He said, give me my mom. And the operator said, Bobby, my mom's not home right now. She's over at Edith Hickmott's playing cards. My dad taught us how to make shark strings that you wear in the ocean to keep the sharks away. You could they were little strings, but they were cute, And we sold those, but my brother thought he'd take it further, and he took a roll-down blind from Connor's Inn, and he wrote the history of the shark string on it. And so for 10 cents more, you could come down get off, come down under the boardwalk, and he would pull it down, and you could read the history of the shark string. She rented surreys and bicycles. She would go around to the garage and ride them up the alley and get them all ready and all. She had help. She would have one helper sometimes. She'd rent rooms upstairs in the morning, get that all ready, get the bed and breakfast all ready, and then come downstairs and open up the bike shop. She made a good go of it. She would take collateral, rings and watches, if you're going to take her bikes out. She wanted them back because people wouldn't bring them back. And I remember one time I said, Mom, that's a pretty ring, This was long after the bike shop closed. She said, yeah, somebody didn't return the bike, And the lounge, she'd rent out lounge chairs. On the 4th of July, I was on a lounge chair one time, and it was night. And a guy came up and started shaking. He said, hey, I paid $4 for that, She rented him the lounge chair for $4. We got a job at the Crab Claw. We were prep girls in the back, Kept us, Mr. Higgins, the owner, kept us in the back. And we would make soups and, fry up things and get things ready for the cooks. And but we would, every now and then, as often as we could, we would get out of that prep room and go visit the steamers in the back, and the waitresses and the bartender and all that. And he would say, get back in the... One time he came back and said, okay, here's a gallon of bouillon cubes. He put it down. He said, I want you to unwrap all the cubes, get them ready for the soup. So we did, and we went to him and said, Mr. Higgins, we finished. We unwrapped them. He said, wrap them back up again. He wanted to keep us out of trouble. My mother played piano. We had one. She loved the Black Hawk Waltz. That was her favorite piece, the Black Hawk Waltz. Well, played it all the time. And nobody knows what it is, You never hear of the Black Hawk Waltz. Well, when she passed, I was with her in Salisbury. She had moved back to Salisbury, her hometown. And it was morning, and she had passed away. And I was alone with her. And it took a long time for the hospice nurse to show up. And she did. And, after she was there for a while, she looked over and saw the piano. She said, oh, who plays the piano? I said, Mom did. I said, she loved the Black Hawk Waltz. Well, this hospice nurse, with her mask and gloves on, went over to the piano and sat down and played the Black Hawk Waltz. This young hospice nurse knew it. And at about that time, my brother walked in. And here was this nurse playing the Black Hawk Waltz with Mom in her, she had passed on. And it was like a big tribute. And I said, I think Mom's made it to heaven. This must be a sign.